Many years ago, in the warm and colorful African kingdom of Iran, there lived a young woman named Nah. The red earth of her village always glowed under the sun and the palm. Trees swayed gently whenever the wind passed through them. Nahara grew up in this place, surrounded by the sound of talking drums, evening fires, roasted plantain, and the laughter of children who played freely in the dust. Her mother died when she was still a child, and her father, a quiet fisherman, raised her with discipline, kindness, and deep prayer. Nahara became known across the Zeba for her soft, calming voice. She never refused work in the house of God. She swept the church, washed benches, led children in songs, and helped widows carry water from the stream. People admired her beauty and her heart even more. They always said Nahara carried the kind of spirit that heaven liked to watch. By the time she became a young woman, suitors began to appear like stars in the night sky. Some were strong warriors, some were rich farmers, some came only because of her beauty. Nahara knew better. Before she accepted anyone, she prayed and waited for God's direction. One day, after fellowship, she met a man named Tego. He was an assistant pastor, newly transferred to their village. He was gentle, quiet, and respectful. His presence was calming. Whenever the service ended, he waited patiently for Nahara to finish arranging chairs before he spoke to her. One evening, he said her voice sounded like something God placed in the world to heal people. His sincerity touched her heart. Tego started visiting her home. He greeted her father politely each time. He helped prepare fishing nets and sometimes brought fruits with him. Everyone in Iziba liked him. They told Nahara that Tego looked like the kind of man any wise woman would choose. Their words made her smile, but she still prayed. She never rushed matters of the heart. Then one night she had a strange dream. She saw herself standing in a field of flowers with two paths opening before her. One path was bright, the other was dark and full of mist. A voice told her that the journey ahead would come with pain, but the end would shine like gold. When she woke up, fear sat heavily in her chest. She prayed again and again for understanding. A few days later, after choir practice, Tego called her to the mango tree beside the church. Fireflies were dancing around them. He told her he had prayed for months and God showed him she was his wife. Nahara felt her heart shake. Every part of her wanted to say yes, but she asked for time to pray. He understood and promised to wait patiently. Before she gave him her reply, something unexpected happened. On her way back from the stream one evening, an old woman known as Mama Zami called her. Mama Zami was the village prophetess. Her eyes were sharp and her words usually came true. She placed a hand on Nahara's shoulder and told her she was standing at the edge of a river. The first steps would burn her feet, but she must not be afraid. Nahara tried to ask what it meant, but Mama Zami only said the end of her journey would be sweet like honey. Those words stayed with her for nights. Still, when the pastors and elders prayed over her and she felt peace deep inside her, Nahara finally agreed to marry Tego. The whole village celebrated. Women tied their wrappers high and danced. Children ran around the compound singing wedding songs. The smell of fresh jollof rice filled the air. Nahara walked down the aisle under the shade of the tall iroko tree. She wore white lace with coral beads around her neck. Tego's eyes became wet when he saw her. They exchanged vows, and the church choir sang beautifully. The whole moment felt like a piece of heaven. Yet, deep inside her spirit, something trembled. A quiet whisper told her that her journey was just beginning in the test. ahead would not be small. Ayo woke up before the sun had touched the horizon. The air felt colder than usual, and the silence around him carried a strange weight. For a moment, he lay still on the thin mat, inside their little mud house, and listened to the breathing of his mother. She had not slept properly for weeks. She tried to hide her tiredness, but her eyes always told the truth. Ao sat up slowly and looked at her. The early light coming through the doorway fell gently on her face. He felt the familiar mix of love and worry rising in his chest. He knew today would not be easy. Today he would start something that no child in the village had dared to attempt for many years. When he stepped outside, the world was still half asleep. The red earth felt cold under his feet, and a light wind moved through the dry grass. Ao walked to the old acacia tree where he often sat when he needed to think. He held a small clay pot in his hands. It was empty, but to him it felt heavy. This was the pot he would fill with water for his mother when he returned from the long journey he had decided to take. He looked at the endless line of the savannah stretching out before him. It looked both beautiful and frightening. Somewhere beyond those plains was the river that still held water, the river that could save his mother and many others. Ao had heard the stories. The elders often spoke about that river. Some said the path was dangerous. Some said spirits wandered those lands. Some said only the strongest hearts could reach the river and return. Ao was not sure if he was strong enough, but he felt something inside him that pushed him forward. It was not courage alone. It was love, a love so deep that it made fear feel small. As he sat under the tree, a shadow fell beside him. Ao turned and saw his friend Keone standing there. She carried a small bag made of woven grass, and she looked at him with a calm seriousness. Keone was the only one who knew about his plan. Last night, he had whispered it to her while everyone else slept. He had expected her to tell him he was being foolish, but instead, she had nodded quietly and said she would help him prepare. Keone sat down beside him now. Her hair was tied with a strip of bright cloth, and her dark eyes looked like they held more understanding than her age allowed. She handed him the small bag. "I brought food," she said in a soft voice. "Dried maize bread and a little fruit. It is not much, but it will help you on the way." Ao took the bag and felt a tightness in his throat. "Thank you," he said. "I do not know how long I will be gone." Keone looked out at the plain. "Bring water back. That is all that matters. Your mother needs you. The whole village needs you. That is enough reason to go." Ao felt strength returning to him. Keone always knew how to speak in a way that made things clearer. They sat quietly for a while, letting the wind fill the silence. The sun was rising now, and the golden light spread across the land. Birds began to sing in distant trees, and the world felt as if it was waking up slowly. Ao stood and tied the bag around his shoulder. He looked down at the clay pot again. "I will fill this," he said. "I will bring it back, even if my legs give up." Keone smiled. "Then you must go now before the sun becomes too strong." Ao nodded. The moment felt heavy and real. He took one last look at his home. He could see his mother inside, still sleeping. He whispered a small prayer for her health, then turned toward the path that led away from the village. The journey began with simple steps. Ao walked across the open grasslands, feeling the sun grow warmer on his back. The dry earth cracked under his feet. He saw the tracks of antelopes and the distant shape of wildebeest grazing. But the beauty of the land did not lessen the distance he had to cover. Every step reminded him that the river was far, very far. As the morning grew brighter, the heat became stronger. Ao felt sweat forming on his forehead. His throat felt dry, but he refused to drink the little water he carried. He needed to save it. He kept walking. The sky was wide above him, and the world felt endless. But he did not allow fear to settle. Instead, he let the image of his mother guide him. He remembered her gentle smile. He remembered how she used to braid his hair when he was younger. He remembered how she stayed up at night, whispering prayers for his dreams. Those memories became his strength. By midday, Ao reached a line of large rocks that stood like silent guardians of the land. He rested in their shade. He ate a small piece of maize bread Keone had given him. It tasted dry, but it filled his stomach enough to keep him moving. As he sat there, he heard a rustling sound. A small antelope stood a few meters away, watching him. Its eyes were full of curiosity. For a moment, Ao felt a strange connection with the animal. Both were just trying to survive in a difficult world. The antelope ran off, and Ao felt a renewed sense of energy. He continued his journey. The savannah slowly changed as he walked further. Trees became fewer. The ground became harder. The wind carried dust that stung his eyes. But Ao kept his eyes on the horizon. He knew the river was somewhere beyond this harsh land. As evening approached, the sky turned a deep orange. Aae found a small cluster of bushes and decided to rest there for the night. He sat on the ground and hugged his knees. The sky grew darker. Stars appeared like silver dots scattered across the sky. The night felt cold and lonely. Aa closed his eyes and imagined his mother's voice telling him stories as she used to when he was younger. He let those memories fill the emptiness around him. Suddenly, he heard footsteps approaching. His heart jumped. He held his breath and listened. A figure moved toward him from the shadows. The moonlight touched the face, and Ao recognized him. It was Jaber, the old hunter from the neighboring village. Jaber carried a long spear and wore a necklace of carved wood. He had deep lines on his face and eyes that had seen many journeys. "What are you doing out here alone?" boy Jaber asked with a firm voice. Ao stood and bowed respectfully. "I am going to the river. My village needs water." Jaber looked at him for a long moment. Then his expression softened slightly. "You are brave, but bravery without guidance can lead to sorrow." "I must go," Ao said. "My mother is sick." The old hunter sighed. "Then I will walk with you for a while. These lands hold dangers you do not know." Ao felt relief. He nodded gratefully. Jaber sat down beside him and shared a little roasted meat. They ate in silence. The night wind carried strange sounds from distant animals, but Ao felt safer now with Jaber beside him. Before sleeping, Jaber spoke again. "The river is real, boy, but the path tests the spirit. Only those who walk with a clear heart reach it." Ao listened closely. His heart felt steady. His purpose felt even stronger. He lay down under the open sky and let the stars watch over him. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew he would keep walking. For his mother, for his village, for hope. And that knowledge carried him into sleep like a gentle hand guiding him into dreams. Ao woke before dawn again. The sky was still dark and the air was cold enough to sting his skin. Jaber was already awake. The old hunter sat silently with his spear resting across his knees. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, as if he could already see the coming day. Hidden behind the darkness, Ao stretched his legs, which felt stiff from the long walk, but his heart felt steady. He knew there was no turning back now. Every step he had taken had pushed him further from home and closer to the river that could save his village. Jaber looked at him finally. "Today will be harder than yesterday," he said in a calm voice. "The land ahead is not kind, but the river lies beyond it. If your spirit stays clear, you will reach it." Ao nodded with quiet determination. His mother's face flashed in his mind. Her gentle hands, her tired eyes, the way she whispered prayers for him each night. Those memories wrapped around him like a protective cloth. They began walking. The early light slowly touched the land and revealed the world around them. The savannah looked different here. The grass was shorter. The trees stood sparse and twisted. The earth seemed darker, as if it had gone through many seasons of struggle. Ao felt a strange heaviness in the air. His presence gave Ao comfort. As the sun climbed the sky, the temperature rose sharply. The heat pressed against Ao like a heavy hand. Sweat collected on his forehead. His throat felt dry. Jabir noticed and slowed his pace. "Save your water," the old hunter warned. "This land steals strength. Do not give it a chance." They continued through a stretch of rocky ground. Sharp stones poked at Ao's feet. He had walked barefoot his whole life, but this place felt harsher than anything he had known. The rocks shimmered in the sunlight. A faint mirage danced in the distance, making the world look wavy and unreal. Ao's steps began to feel heavy. A strange ringing filled his ears. For a moment he swayed. Jabir caught his arm instantly. "Sit," Jabir said firmly. Ao sat on a warm, flat rock. Jabir gave him a tiny sip of water, just enough to wet his tongue. Ao let the water rest in his mouth before swallowing. It felt like the most precious thing in the world. "You must listen to your body," Jabir said. "The land does not forgive carelessness." Ao nodded. He felt the strength returning slowly. He closed his eyes for a moment and imagined his mother's voice calling his name in the soft way she always did. That memory pushed him back on his feet. They walked again. Hours passed. The sun reached its highest point. They entered a wide and open area where the earth looked cracked. The heat rose in shimmering waves. Suddenly Jabir stopped. His hand lifted slightly, a silent command. Ao froze. A low growl rolled across the land. A shadow moved near a cluster of dry bushes. Ao's heart beat faster. A lion stepped into view. Its golden fur glowed under the sunlight. Its eyes held a deep, wild intelligence. Ao felt fear crawling up his spine. He had seen lions before, but never this close. Jabir stood tall, holding his spear with practiced calm. The lion stared at them for a long moment. The world felt silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. "Do not run," Jabir whispered. "Running invites death." Ao swallowed hard. He stood as still as he could. His breath felt tight inside his chest. The lion stepped closer. Its powerful muscles rippled under its skin. Then, without warning, the lion turned away. It walked toward the shade of a distant rock and disappeared. Ao exhaled shakily. "Why did it leave?" he asked. Jabir looked at him with a faint smile. "The land tests the heart. You held your ground. That is why we are still standing." They continued walking. The encounter with the lion shook Ao, but it also made him feel stronger. He had faced fear and survived. His steps felt firmer now. By late afternoon, clouds gathered in the sky. A rare cold wind swept across the land. They reached a place where tall trees formed a natural arch. The air here felt different, softer, and calmer. Jabir stopped again. "This place is sacred," he said. "Many travelers rest here before their final journey to the river." Aa looked around. The trees seemed older than time itself. Their trunks were thick and covered with carvings left by people who had passed long before. Ao touched one of the carvings. It was a simple symbol shaped like waves. He felt a warm pulse in his chest. They rested under the trees. Jabir shared a small piece of roasted root. The taste was earthy, but filled Ao with new strength. As they ate, Jaber began to speak. Long ago, he said, our people lived close to the river. It gave life to the village, but a great drought came. The river shrank. The people moved away, searching for water. Many forgot the path. Only a few return each year when the land becomes desperate. Ao listened deeply. If the river is so far, why did you not go before? He asked. Jaber looked at him with eyes full of old stories. Because each journey changes a person. Some who go return wiser. Some return broken. Some never return at all. Io felt a shiver run through him, but he did not look away. I will return. I have to. Jaber nodded slowly. Your heart is pure. The river will know that. As the sun began to fall behind the trees, they started walking again. The land ahead sloped downward. The air became cooler. A faint sound reached Ao's ears. It was soft at first, like a whisper carried by the wind. Ao stopped walking. Do you hear that? He asked. Jaber listened. A small smile touched his lips. Yes. You are hearing the beginning of the river's voice. Ao's heart jumped. He walked faster. The sound grew louder. It was like a distant song made of flowing water and moving air. The land opened into a valley, and far ahead, glittering under the fading light, was a long silver line. The river. Ao stared at it with wide eyes. His chest felt warm, his legs trembled, and tears stung his eyes. After all the heat, the hunger, the fear, and the long, endless walk, he was finally close. But Jaber placed a hand on his shoulder. Do not celebrate yet. The last part of the journey is the hardest. Ao nodded, though he did not fully understand. They continued downhill. The sky turned purple. Shadows grew long. The river glowed in the distance like hope made real. As night approached, they reached a cluster of stones near a small clearing. We rest here, Jaber said. Tomorrow you will face the river. Ao lay down on the cool earth. The sound of water echoed softly in his ears. It felt like a promise that he was close to saving his mother, close to saving his village, close to fulfilling the purpose that had carried him through every step. He closed his eyes and let the sound of the river guide him into sleep. Tomorrow, the real test would begin. The sun had barely risen when Ao opened his eyes. The air was crisp and carried the soft smell of wet earth from the river. Last night's sleep had been the deepest he had ever had, and he woke with a sense of purpose heavier than ever before. The river was close now. He could hear its soft gurgle calling him like an old friend. Jaber was already awake, sitting quietly by the water, sharpening the edges of his spear. The old hunter looked at Ao with a knowing smile, a smile that said this was the day everything would change. Aa rose and stepped carefully over the smooth stones. His bare feet felt the cool water lapping against them. For a moment he closed his eyes and let the river's sound wash over him. It was as if the land itself was welcoming him, acknowledging his courage and determination. He dipped his clay pot into the river. The water filled it effortlessly, sparkling in the morning sunlight. Ao held it close and smiled, tears welling in his eyes. He had made it. He had not just reached the river. He had conquered fear, hunger, and doubt. Jaber placed a hand on his shoulder. The river is generous, he said softly, but the journey back is not done. You must carry hope home, not just water. Ao nodded. His heart was full of a deep understanding. The river's water was a gift. But what truly mattered was the courage he carried, the love for his mother, and the faith he had kept alive in his heart. Together, they began the long journey back to the village. Every step felt lighter than before. as if the river itself was guiding them. The sun climbed higher, but the wind carried a soft coolness, as though the land had changed to reward their bravery. Along the way, Ao noticed small signs of life returning. Birds sang in the trees. Antelopes grazed along the path. Even the cracked earth seemed to hold a faint promise of renewal. Ao remembered the stories Jabeir had told him about the old travelers who never returned. He realized now that those journeys had been more than survival. They had been lessons in patience, humility, and the strength of the human heart. By the time the village came into view, late in the afternoon, Ao's legs were tired, but his spirits soared. From a distance, he could see smoke rising from the chimneys of the mud houses. Children ran across the red earth, chasing one another with laughter. Women carried baskets to the wells, and there, in the small doorway of their own home, stood his mother. She had been waiting, her eyes scanning the horizon as if she knew he would return today. The moment she saw him, she dropped the cloth she had been weaving and ran, her steps quick and trembling with relief. Ao ran toward her, the clay pot held high. Tears streamed down both their faces as they embraced. "Mother," he cried, "I have brought water. The river is full. You will not thirst again." His mother held him tightly, as though she would never let him go. "My son," she whispered, "you have made our prayers come true. You are brave. You are strong. You are a gift from God." The villagers soon gathered, drawn by the sight of Ao returning with the river's water. They marveled at the courage of the young boy, who had journeyed through the harsh lands, faced wild lions, and returned with life for all. Ao shared the water with everyone. His mother watched, pride shining in her eyes, as the villagers drank and celebrated. The small stream he carried in his pot became a symbol of hope, courage, and the power of a determined heart. That evening, the village held a small celebration. Children danced around the fire, women sang in harmony, and men clapped their hands in rhythm. Ao and his mother sat together, smiling at the joy they had helped create. Jabeir stood nearby, leaning on his spear, a faint smile of approval on his face. "You have done well, boy," he said quietly. "You have not only found the river, but reminded everyone that courage and faith can overcome any obstacle." Ao looked at his mother and whispered a prayer of gratitude. He thanked the land for guiding him, the river for its gift, and Jabeir for his wisdom. The stars began to appear in the sky above, reflecting in the river's calm surface. It was a night full of promise. The drought would soon end, and the village would thrive again. But more importantly, Ao had discovered something no river could give: a heart unshaken by fear, a spirit strengthened by love, and the knowledge that even the smallest among them could achieve greatness. The next morning, the village awoke to the sight of fresh water flowing through channels dug by the elders. Crops would grow again. Children would laugh again. Mothers and fathers would work together to build a stronger future. And Ao, he became known as the boy who walked beyond fear, who returned with life in his hands, and who taught his people the value of hope. From that day forward, every sunset reminded them of his journey, a tale of courage that would be told for generations. Ao stood by the riverbank once more, the sun warm on his skin, and watched the water ripple with the gentle breeze. He smiled, not just for himself, but for everyone whose life had been touched by his journey. The land, the river, the village, and the people had been tested and had survived. And in that moment, everything felt complete, joyful, and alive. The river sparkled, the village hummed with life, and Ao, the boy who dared to dream, knew that this was only the beginning of many great journeys yet to come.